Hello everyone, good evening. We've got a full house today, very nearly. So, hello and welcome to Chelmsford's Policy Board. Before the meeting starts, I have the usual announcements, which please do bear with me. In case of a fire, a bell will ring continuously. If this occurs, please leave the building immediately, following the green fire exit signs out to the assembly point, which is by the War Memorial on Duke Street. If anyone requires assistance, please do let me know. Lifts should not be used. Please remain at the assembly point and do not attempt to return into the building until you've been advised that it is safe to do so. The toilets are situated on the landing at the top of the main staircase and on the ground floor in the customer service centre. Anyone attending this meeting is entitled to film it, but I should point out that only the councillors, officers and anyone sitting around these tables may be filmed. Members of the public should not be filmed, so please ensure that cameras are pointed only in this direction. This meeting is also being broadcast via YouTube and recorded. When speaking, please may I remind the board to ensure that you turn on your microphone and to speak closely into it. A red light will appear on the middle button to indicate that your microphone is switched on. When finished speaking, please remember to turn your microphone off again. And Dan, do we have any apologies?
Just from Councillor Whitehead and Councillor Scott is subbing.
Lovely. And can I ask members of the board to declare any interests at this point? None? And can I ask members of the board to agree the minutes of the last meeting? Agreed? Am I allowed to sign it in pink? There you go. We have not received any questions in from members of the public, and these had to be submitted by 7 p.m. on Wednesday. So we can go now to our only item on the agenda, the Chelmsford Local Plan, and that's being presented by Jeremy, I believe.
Thank you and good evening, Policy Board. Very short intro from me and then I'll hand over to Laura who just runs you through a presentation. So this item, it provides the board with consultation feedback from the additional sites consultation that we undertook or closed earlier on in the year, this year, and this represents the final stage of preparation of the local plan before we submit it to the government or planning inspectorate for its independent examination. So I'll hand over to Laura, who will go through the presentation. Laura.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So the board will be aware that this consultation ran for 7 weeks from the 20th of November last year to the 8th of January this year. This was a week longer than the statutory 6-week period to allow for Christmas. It was our second Regulation 19 consultation and represented the 4th technical consultation on the plan and was a focus consultation on the additional sites being proposed and consequential changes as a result of the inclusion of those sites rather than a full consultation on the entire plan. Being a Regulation 19 consultation, we were required to seek views on whether the additional sites and relevant consequential changes comply with all relevant regulations and legislation, and if they met a series of soundness tests set out in national planning policy. You can see on the slide here that a comprehensive programme of consultation took place. These exceeded requirements set out in legislation and commitments in the Council's own adopted Statement of Community Involvement and involved a range of activities set out on the slide, including direct email letter notifications to more than 10,100 contacts on our local plan database, 5 social media posts, stories, feeds and adverts, 18 days of public exhibitions and 80 site notices displayed across the 15 additional sites. More information on the full package of consultation that was undertaken is provided in the additional sites feedback report attached at Appendix 1. So we received a good level of response to the consultation, with 1,082 duly made representations, which came from 780 individual respondents. That included one petition, which was signed by 178 individuals. Responses were received from residents, developers, businesses, parish councils and other statutory bodies such as Natural England, the Environment Agency, Historic England and National Highways. Section 3 of the feedback report provides a summary of the main issues raised in the comments and any requested changes to the plan. It's important to note that the feedback report presented this evening does not seek to report on every point or issue raised, as this would result in an extremely long report, but all representations can be viewed online. Also at this stage, no attempt has been made to analyse or provide a council response to the representations. This will be done alongside submission of the plan. So effectively this evening you're considering our stage 1 sort of you said feedback report, and with the stage 2 of you said and our response to those comments will follow once we have fully assessed the comments, and this follows the same approach that we've taken throughout the review of the local plan. A high-level overview of the main issues raised is presented in the feedback report and section 3 of your covering report. Overall, this describes that we had a good level of feedback received, ranging from general comments to observations on detailed policy wording. Most government agencies or national bodies support the plan outright, or others qualified support subject to some minor proposed amendments to some sites. Parish councils mainly opposed sites, with many suggesting changes, including the deletion of site allocations. Most public comments were objecting to one or more of the additional sites, though there was some limited support as well. There was a mix of support and opposition to the proposed changes to the development requirements, which were set out in policy S6, and the spatial strategy, which is policy S7. Concerns that the spatial strategy is too reliant on larger strategic sites, particularly the garden communities, has an insufficient supply buffer, doesn't meet the housing needs in the standard method, and is too reliant on windfall sites. There was also concern that there was not enough employment sites to align with the housing growth proposed, and not enough small sites, small site housing allocations, which would not accord with national policy requirements. Calls from developers for greenbelt, grey belt, and green wedge reviews to identify further sustainable development opportunities in these areas were put forward from them. There was also some concern over the build-out rate and delivery period for sites from the development industry, with some calling for an immediate or early review of the plan to meet housing needs as soon as possible, and also some detailed wording changes requested to site policies, from minor changes to, again, the deletion of some policy requirements being suggested. There was broad support for the promoters of allocated sites, with some requests for higher capacities, larger site areas, and policy requirement changes. Some further alternative site allocations promoted by landowners and developers at a range of site sizes and locations were put forward. There were relatively high levels of objections to some site locations, in particular land west of Patchinghall Lane, which received the petition against it, land west of Barbrook Way and Bicknaker, and the 3 sites in East Hanningfield for multiple reasons, including traffic, infrastructure, landscape, and flood risk impacts, and calls for their removal. Concerns from Broomfield and Boreham parish councils and the public that some site allocations do not reflect made or progressing neighbourhood plans, and some criticism from some parish councils and the public regarding the consultation, including a lack of adequate engagement, inaccessible information, and that the process for making comments was too complicated. It should be noted that comments were directed to the contents of the additional sites consultation, and we didn't receive comments in respect of the wider plan policies outside the scope of the consultation. So they were directed to the correct parts of the plan, which was helpful. Alongside the additional sites document, as previously, the Integrated Impact Assessment, or IIA for short, assess the additional sites against a range of social, environmental, economic, health and equality indicators, advising on ways in which any adverse effects could be avoided, reduced or mitigated, or how any positive effects could be maximised. You can see from the slide here, we received 47 responses to the document from 41 individual respondents. These have been analysed by the Council's consultants in the feedback report attached at Appendix 2. Overall, there is general support for the IIA and its analysis. Specific concerns raised by respondents to the consultation are summarised in Section 4 of your covering report and include comments that covered a lack of justification and evidence for the site allocations, questioning of the IIA scoring for specific indicators, that other alternative options, more suitable, including higher housing growth options and alternative development sites promoted by landowners. There were some objections to a lack of a Greenbelt review and disagreement with the continued protection of the Green Wedge, and also some comments about the scale of some of the proposed allocations in relation to the size of existing communities. Taking into account the comments received and responses provided in Appendix 2, no changes to the IIA or the local plan as a result are considered to be required at this stage. Alongside the feedback report, the covering report, you will see we also wanted to take the opportunity to provide an update on improvements to junction 19 of the A12. Members will recall that one of the significant events prior to the consultation on the additional sites was the Development Consent Order, DCO, widening scheme of the A12 from Chelmsford to the A120 being cancelled, which included some significant improvements to junction 19, which is the Borough interchange. These junction improvements supported significant house building in Chelmsford, including the North East Chelmsford Garden community allocated in the adopted local plan, and making good progress in terms of delivery. As part of the planning applications for the North East Chelmsford Garden community, more detailed traffic modelling has been undertaken to identify the development's impact on junction 19 and to determine the necessary mitigation measures to accommodate the development's growth. As a result of this, a scheme for the first phase of improvements to junction 19 was approved in principle by National Highways and Essex County Council at Planning Committee on the 15th of December last year. A funding package is being assembled for this part of the scheme, with confirmation on the full funding package anticipated in spring-summer of this year, with work expected to commence in 2027. In addition to this, further detailed traffic modelling is currently being undertaken to establish whether additional growth proposed over the local plan would necessitate further mitigation at junction 19 over and above what is already being progressed in association with the North East Chelmsford Garden community. This will determine any appropriate further mitigation required at the junction, as well as consideration of junctions 18 and 17 of the A12. In parallel to this, Ourselves and Essex County Council are continuing to lobby for funding for the delivery of the Paynes Lane walking, cycling and horse riding bridge from the east of Boreham across the A12 to Bewley Park Station as a separate project. This was formerly part of the DCO package improvements for Junction 19. As part of the DCO cancellation announcement, it's also worth noting that the Minister of State for Transport stated that smaller interventions on the A12 could still be considered where they're capable of unlocking growth. Discussions are ongoing between National Highways and government to explore opportunities to access funding and to consider options for a phased approach to delivering improvements on the A12, including at Junction 19, to support the proposed local plan growth. A further detailed mitigation modelling demonstrating what improvements are required to support the local plan is expected to be completed ahead of submission of the local plan, and the Council's continuing to engage with Essex County Council and National Highways to find an acceptable solution. And we've got a statement of common ground being prepared between the three parties, which is also expected to be completed ahead of submission of the plan. But overall, I suppose the take-home from all of that is that officers are confident that outstanding matters will be resolved, and National Highways and Essex Highways will agree that the local plan growth does not have a severe impact on the strategic highway network, which is the test that the local plan needs to meet. Did you want?
I will just jump in there, if, Chair, with your permission. Thank you. I mean, you'll see that there's £12 million there. That was the confirmed. I found out today that that might actually be slightly more than that, which is good. So, so the funding package may well be up to 14 million now. We've managed to secure two further £1 million. So, and that was just confirmed today. So, good news on that front.
Thank you.
Are you happy to take questions now? I've just seen Councillor Jeeps has a question, or is it relating to that point that Jeremy's just raised?
It's actually relating to the junction improvements and the traffic thing. I just didn't know whether it would be appropriate to do it now as we've been talking about it all.
Yes, if you're happy to answer it as we go along, absolutely, Councillor Jeeps.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that the traffic modelling appears to be only around the local plan, which I assume is our local plan. And it's been raised, I think, through the consultation process that the A12 is almost like a river with all the tributaries going through it. These additional homes and everything are all down the corridor of the A12. Is anything being done to model the actual capacity of the A12 despite junction improvements? If junction improvements swifts you onto a road that is going nowhere and blocked, is that part of the plan or not?
Yes, that as part of our local plan modelling, it does look at not only our growth, because he said that the roads are tributaries and everything flows down them. It also looks at growth from neighbouring authorities and the A12 as a whole. So all of that is factored into the modelling. And that's also in part why we work very closely with National Highways, who are responsible for the A12, to ensure that they're happy with what essentially what we're putting into our modelling, to make sure they're in agreement with us in terms of the capacity of the road itself, as well as the junction. So yes, that's covered.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the next steps, Section 6 of the covering report describes that submission of the plan for examination is expected to take place in early June, following agreements from this board, Cabinet and full Council in May and early June of this year. Section 6 of the covering report also sets out work underway to prepare the documents for submission alongside the local plan itself. This includes a statement of consultation, which will provide focused council responses to the main issues raised not only in the pre-submission, so that was the first Regulation 19 consultation, and this additional site's second Regulation 19 consultation. This will help the inspector and respondents understand the council's position going into the examination. It is also anticipated that a schedule of proposed modifications will be produced setting out minor changes that the council would like to make to the plan, for example, to reflect new information or to improve clarity. This is an entirely normal process. It will add to the robustness of the plan and make sure that what we're submitting, that things are up to date. In addition, discussions also continue with stakeholders to produce new or updated statements of common ground, as you heard me speaking previously with National Highways, for example, and that's in line with national planning policy to produce those statements of common ground. So, in conclusion, the additional sites consultation was the final consultation on the review of the adopted Chelmsford local plan. It was supported by a strong consultation strategy and attracted a good level of response from a wide variety of individuals and organisations. The representations will be considered and then collated and submitted with the local plan itself and the other supporting documentation for examination. Submission will take place in June, following approvals from this board, the Cabinet and full council. So I will now refer you to the recommendations shown on the slide and included on page 1 of your covering report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or points that we'd like to raise? Councillor Jeeps.
Yeah, there are some rumours flying that as a result of these additional sites, it might impact on the numbers that have already been put into what I'd call stage 1. Has there been any alteration to the numbers of houses, for example, Hammond's Farm, or do the findings of the first stage of it remain exactly the same?
Yeah, the two consultations, we very specifically kept them apart for obvious reasons. So other than the sites in the additional sites, the 3 that were extended and made larger, all the other sites, as in the original Reg 19, beg your pardon, stay as they were.
Thank you very much. Just one additional, if I may. Thank you, Chair. If, as we've seen, that sites don't come forward and start being developed as they were scheduled, does it mean that once approved, sites might overtake one another in terms of the fact you will have several approved areas, some of which have still not been developed, but we've got these newer ones coming on stream? Is there an order of things, or will they end up being developed as they can be?
They will come forward as they come forward. We try and, for the purpose of trying to understand for our 5-year land supply, when we expect things to happen, and work closely with the developers of those sites to understand that sort of anticipated delivery. Things may change. But ultimately, as long as the sites can come forward through their planning applications with all the necessary infrastructure and mitigation alongside them, that really determines the timing of them more than anything.
Thank you very much.
Can I just come back on just one point there, Councillor Jeeps, is that I suppose in some regards, it's unlikely to be a situation where all the developers might come forward all at the same time, because effectively they can only sell, there's only a certain amount of market absorption, there's only a certain amount of people that are willing to buy houses. In that regard, it's quite unlikely. There's kind of like a self-policing market happened in that regard. So just to sort of allay any fears that, you know, you might have really big peaks and really big troughs. I think it's unlikely to be like that. It's probably more likely to be relatively steady as you go.
Thank you. are we ready to move to the motion? It's a very quick meeting. Please do. Oh, no. Oh, Councillor Thorpe, perhaps. We almost made it. Go on.
Thank you. Apologies. I wasn't going to say anything, actually, because I have been corresponding with officers about this, but I'll just mention that anyway. Firstly, thanks to officers for the consultation. A lot of work obviously goes into these documents. From my perspective, it's good to see that there's no additional housing proposed for Strategic Growth Site 2, given that Warren Farm, as we know, will already place a lot of significant pressure on that side of Chelmsford, the infrastructure. There's feedback from developers in the document urging review of the Green Wedge and the Green Belt. Shock horror, you might say. But I'm pleased to see that these calls are being rebuffed by the officers. The Green Wedge, as we know, is vital in maintaining a sense of place and preventing urban sprawl. Given the consultation responses do identify potential areas for inclusion in the Green Wedge, could I ask that this feedback, and accepting that we can't do anything with it now as part of this process, but could it be recorded and retained for the next local plan review rather than being lost as part of this process? For example, you've got SGS 19, west of Patching Hall Lane, known as the Felsted Field Gap. That's identified by residents and the Parish Council, Broomfield Parish Council, as the buffer preventing Chelmsford and Broomfield from merging. And then similarly, you have SGS 18A to the northwest of Chelmsford, where residents fear the loss of long-established green buffers and the encroachment of the urban edge. So these areas are doing what the green wedges are meant to do, holding the line, and I wonder if they could be kept in mind for future consideration. Finally, notwithstanding the West Edge protections that we do have, the existing policies for the green wedge, given the recent situation, as I say, we corresponded about this, but we did have a situation where there was a development site that was approved by officers in the Green Wedge near the Fox and Raven pub. Could we give serious thought to pursuing valued landscape designation after this process concludes? Again, reflecting the importance of the Green Wedge in protecting the local character. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. I think we're all really proud of our Green Wedge. I think our Green Wedge makes us very different from a lot of places, and it permeates right into the city centre. And in fact, the Green Wedge has turned out to be a really powerful local landscape designation. In fact, I would say it's more powerful than Greenbelt is now, because the government has actually watered down Greenbelt. So Green Wedge has become, an incredibly important tool to ensure that Chelmsford grows in a way that is aligns with its morphology and its topography. In terms of the valued landscape matter, there's no specific requirements in terms of valued landscape, which is not particularly helpful. The NPPF says about it, and then it doesn't say how you measure a valued landscape. So every landscape's valued by someone. So I suppose it's the way the NPPF frames that is that there is quite a high bar in terms of valued landscapes. That said, we've had a number of appeals. The Fox and Raven is one of them. There's also the travelling show person's site at kind of the back of Roselawn Farm on Broomfield. And although that was allowed for I think it was a 3-year period, a temporary, the inspector said there that it was harmful to the Green Wedge, and the inspector said that the Green Wedge, as far as he was concerned, is being considered akin to a valued landscape. And it's the same consideration that's happening at the Fox and Raven. And I suppose with the Fox and Raven, I think it gives members some confidence that even when you really load the balance, affordable housing being the thing that was really loaded in favour of the Fox and Raven, the Green Wedge still prevailed. And of course, there's always a balance to be struck. And you're right, officers probably came on one side of the balance and members were on the other. But the inspector was clear that the green wedge trumped all of that. So I wouldn't want you to go away thinking that the green wedge has lost any of its oomph. In fact, as I say, I think it's actually gained some. So I don't think, in terms of getting valued landscape designation, that isn't a thing that you can just. It's being dealt with on a case by case basis. In terms of the gaps, I think we just need to be mindful that our spatial strategy tries to, well, it does, align allocations to ensure that gaps, important gaps, aren't allocated. I understand what Councillor Thorpe perhaps is saying in relation to, well, you can improve that even more by putting a green wash in between, and that would improve the resilience of that gap. That's something that we will look into, but it won't be this plan, I'm afraid. We're too advanced with this plan. But it's definitely something for a future unitary council, maybe, to look into in terms of the next local plan. And I think the other thing I would just also say is on the edges, where you go out into the countryside, of course, we've already got countryside protection policies that are looking at safeguarding, protecting, enhancing intrinsic landscape character and beauty. So just to make sure, again, that the board are aware that there are other policies, criteria-based policies that can deal with those areas. But yes, I think points well made by Councillor Thorpe, perhaps, and we'll keep them in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments, if Councillor Soshin.
Yes, I'd like to propose the recommendations. They are on the screen there, but I will read them out to some extent. That the board notes the outcomes of the focused consultation, additional sites regulation 19 consultation, and approves the feedback reports at appendices 1 and 2 for publication. And secondly, to delegate authority to the Director of Sustainable Communities in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Greener Chelmsford to make any minor amendments to the focused consultational additional sites Regulation 9 feedback report document and the additional sites integrated impact assessment feedback report. And secondly, to prepare all necessary documentation to support the submission of the plan for independent examination. I so propose. Thank you.
So if I could ask that we vote with a clear show of hands. Oh, I always forget the seconder. Who would like to second? Thank you, Councillor Davey. If we should probably put this in my notes so I remember for next time. If this could please be voted on with a clear show of hands rather than just assent. So can I ask for those who are for to put up their hands? Do I have to do the others? No. Fantastic. Okay. The last item, the only other item on the agenda is going through the work programme, which I believe you might be going through, Dan.
Yeah, the work programme's just had a few updates and it's just simply for noting. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jeremy, or...
There's one update that came up today, in fact, it's a busy day, that our Recreation Avoidance Management Strategy, the RAMS project for the Essex Coast, that Chelmsford City Council do on behalf of a number of Essex districts, we have revised the strategy, updated that strategy, and I think we can now get that to a policy board on the 25th of June. So that wasn't on the schedule, but now we've managed to get agreement with all of our partners. We can get that to you on the 25th of June.
Well, that, I believe you can have your evening back. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Chair, that seems to be an additional meeting during the 25th, is it? Because you've had here on the 19th of May.
I don't believe so, but...
It's just that's only got the 25-26 schedule, not 26-27.
Did you hear that you want?
Thank you.
Yeah?
When I read the minutes, it'll be clearer.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.